think it's a motion sensor. I think it's on a timer.
She's coming back!
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review of the 2017 horror sequel, Victor Crowley, otherwise known as Hatchet 4. The film is written and directed by Adam Green, and it stars Parry Shen, Kane Hodder, Laura Ortiz, Dave Sheridan, Crystal Joy Brown, Felissa Rose, Brian Quinn, and Tiffany Shepis. Right, okay. This film is set a decade after the conclusion of the last film. Victor Crowley was defeated, and the only survivor is Parry Shen's character Andrew from The Slaughter. He has, if you like, tried to profit from his experiences in the swamp in the decade since. Fairly unsuccessfully. He's done like talk shows, he's done a book, that kind of stuff. But a lot of people think he's actually the murderer because he was the only survivor. So then he is given the opportunity to return to the swamp, and is offered a ridiculous amount of money by this TV studio if he goes back to kind of film like a bit of a kind of documentary with this talk show host. But at the same time, there is a group of amateur filmmakers who are also heading to the swamp, trying to do their own version of the Victor Crowley urban myth. However, they unwittingly return Victor Crowley from his grave. The plane crashes that the people in the studios is flying into, and Victor Crowley descends upon this plane crash in order to, well, do what he does. Right, what are my thoughts on Victor Crowley? Well, the Hatchet series, I have reviewed the first three. I think I've given every single one of them a 6 out of 10, the first three. Which basically is nothing outstanding, I know. But they are remarkably consistent, the Hatchet films. They're neither bad and they're neither really good. They are consistent, watchable with some fun kills. Is probably the kind of best compliment I can give the series. I have seen far worse on this channel, trust me. So I was always going to check out Victor Crowley, the fourth one in the series. You know, I've had mixed reports on this film sort of thing in regards to what to expect from it. But I have to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised with this one. This was easily the funniest of the franchise. It didn't take itself too seriously. I'm not saying the others did, but the others had like comedic moments here and there, but it never it kind of felt a little bit uncomfortable. It didn't always suit the film, whereas this time round, it absolutely does feel like it suits the film. It sets its stall out straight away with probably the funniest marriage proposal I've seen on film for a long time. It's set in the past, and you've got this, obviously, this man and this woman. He proposes to her, and it was making me laugh out loud, I'm not going to lie. And that kind of sets the stall early on in regards to what to expect with this one. There are funny and amusing moments in this one, far heavier than we see in the other ones, which I actually quite enjoyed. I'm not going to lie. I thought they worked for this film. Now, my biggest complaint about the Hatchet franchise is the fact that it's always returning to the swamp. Always returning to the swamp. Why would anybody go to this swamp after everything that's gone on? And I still believe that. Why would they go back even in this film? But I suppose, you know, you could argue, well, it's been a decade, there's not been any killings, blah, 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 blah. And a big chunk of this film is set on this crashed airplane. So it's the people inside trying to survive Victor Crowley on the outside. and littered with other bits and pieces of other people in the woods, like I've said, this other amateur film crew. So it keeps things a little bit more varied, not a massive amount, but a little bit more varied. I thought the film was quite surprising in how it chose its, I don't know, final girl, if you like. Early on, there was a front runner for me as to who the final girl was going to be, but the character was killed off remarkably quickly. So I thought that was good. I thought it was interesting. There was a lot of different characters here, and some of them they actually gave them some interesting backstories. There's a little bit of an attempt going into some, not all of them, but a couple of the characters that kind of made you feel it when the characters were killed by Victor. And a lot of them are killed in, obviously, as you would imagine, with this franchise, increasingly creative, graphic, and gory ways. So the film absolutely follows the tradition of the other Hatchet films, with massively over-the-top kills, but they really do work for the movie overall. So I genuinely, I was expecting this one to be really, the runt of the litter, whatever you want to call it, with this being the fourth one. But I mean, because Adam Green returned to this one to direct it, I think it was the last one he didn't direct. But yeah, I think he obviously kind of thought when he was setting out with this one, we're going to have some fun with this one, and they definitely did that. You know what I mean? There was genuinely some moments that will make you kind of smirk and have a little giggle in this one. It's almost like a parody of the other three at times, which is odd, really, because the other three are kind of parodies of, like, Friday the 13th movies in a lot of ways. So it's kind of making fun of itself and the other films and the slasher genre in general. So in a lot of ways, it's actually quite clever. So I mean, I think this franchise is an interesting franchise. It's a fairly decent franchise to watch. And I've said this. I've said this earlier in this review. I do think the films are all consistently watchable, and they're all kind of hovering around, the above average to good at times. But none of them kind of, break through that glass ceiling. But, again, I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. They're remarkably consistent, these films. And they kind of give you, if you're a fan of this franchise, each film kind of gives you what you want. If you're going into this franchise as a fan, there's certain things you're going to want and expect. The graphic over-the-top kills, bits of humour here and there, returning characters from the other films, famous names from horror franchises. I mean, we've got Tyler Mane in this one, I mean, it finished as well with, I mean, it was a very abrupt ending. It was very odd. The film just kind of, boom, ended. And you're like, oh, what's happened? Have they run out of money? And then there was another, like, epilogue kind of thing at the end. And it's almost like, oh, they found a bit more money. They can finish the film now or something. It was odd how it ended the film. But we see Daniel Harris return right at the end. So it kind of suggests, that they're going to continue the franchise. But this was in 2017, and we've not had anything since. So I suspect that's probably the end of the franchise, but never say never. We may well get another one, and if that's the case, I will check it out for you guys. So, yeah, if you've never seen the Hatchet franchise, they're harmless, really, at the end of the day. If you like horror films with lots of graphic violence and, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, then, you could do far worse than this one. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Hatchet franchise, this film, Victor Crowley. Let me know your thoughts on the franchise. Are there any other kind of horror franchises similar to this that you think I should check out? And I will, of course, be back with plenty more content on the channel very, very soon.